Hello chaps, and welcome back to another DTH Reviews. Today we are doing Burial at Sea Part 2. Now we did Burial at Sea Part 1, the link will be on the screen in case you want to click and you want to go back and see what our impressions are. Because Part 2 actually continues straight after Part 1, so it might help if you know what we thought about Part 1. I guess we can always summarise. We said that we liked Part 1. You agree? Yeah, it was good?
Yeah, I think after playing Episode 2, Episode 1 is kind of a little lackluster,
yes,
maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good, decent 2-hour thing.
Yeah. So Part 2 starts off directly where Part 1 ends, but this time you're playing as Elizabeth. I knew this from the get-go, but I didn't realise how much it was going to change the way the game played, and for the better, massively, in my opinion. So, we will talk about the story and setting in a minute, but I think the combat is the thing that has changed the most between the DLCs. Actually, I think it's the biggest change from any of the previous Bioshock games. The combat plays completely different, and I'm going to go ahead and say it's my favourite combat in the whole of the Bioshock franchise, and I enjoyed it the most for the 4 or 5 hour playthrough. It's much longer than the first part, and which I really liked as well.
I was really surprised that they basically turned it into Dishonored. It felt like,
it's not bad. Yeah,
the like creeping around up high in the shadows. They turned it into a complete stealth game, and it's surprisingly fun to play and difficult. You know, it was you really had to be sneaky because you had no health. And did like no damage. I mean, it was kind of weird actually a couple times where I had to go into combat and like shooting a guy in the face with a shotgun did not kill him. But yeah, it was interesting how they really made her feel weak, and it was surprisingly difficult for the first couple hours of just really sneaking around and managing your ammo, because you only have like 4 sleep darts in your crossbow, I think. And, I was really surprised by all of that stealth stuff. It was a welcome change, because I think the gameplay, taking the gameplay of Bioshock Infinite and putting it into the Rapture setting, which is what they did in the first episode, was a little weird.
It did feel a bit off. I agree.
It didn't quite click 100%, I don't think, and this worked really well. This fit the setting, it fit the character, and it fit the story really nicely. And I was really surprised by the gameplay. Yeah. They
also got rid of the sky rails. That's only a small little note, but I think it made a bit of difference, because I remember in the first review saying I didn't really enjoy it. It made it feel way too. It felt too much like Infinite, like you said, like they'd literally ripped out the Infinite combat and put it in a Rapture environment. And there were, what do you call it? They're not sky, I guess they are sky hooks. You could hang from the ceiling, like you said, Dishonored style.
Yeah, they did. They still had those.
But whether you jumped on the floor, you would make noise unless you did. What was it you had to do to not make noise when falling off the? That was it, crouch. So they implemented their own little sneak mechanics into that. So I feel everything they did. It felt more like. I think it felt more like Bioshock, the first one.
It just felt new, yeah, and it felt really unique,
did feel unique,
like for the DLC, which is good, because that helps it sort of set it apart from the other 2 Bioshock games, or the other 3 Bioshock games, and just makes it feel like it's something that wasn't sort of, I don't know. The first episode sort of came across as being a little, I don't know what the right word is, like rushed maybe. No, not rushed, but it just helped give episode 2 a proper identity, which it needed, yeah. I think. Yeah.
So the new things they implemented was a new plasmid called Peeping Tom, where you can see enemies through walls and turn invisible. And then they implemented a crossbow, which I was not expecting, where it comes with a few different bolts, like we've seen in Dishonored, where you can set people to sleep in an area, or you can just knock people out, and it was surprising to see 2 little elements, how different it made the game.
And you being so weak as well.
Yeah, but the unfortunate thing that I committed to myself, I actually, there's a kind of hub-like area in the game where you can go multiple paths, and it does come to play into the story where you have to go to different areas, but me being a curious cat, I kind of just started going to like a future area, let's say, an area you weren't supposed to go to, and I was like, wow, this is difficult, and I pushed forward and managed to get through it, and then I found a plasmid upgrade which allowed me to be invisible when I was standing still for an infinite amount of time, which made it much easier for me. This was a mistake. I obviously wasn't supposed to do this, but I thought I would just include this to say that I still enjoyed it, but I kind of jeopardized the way it was supposed to be played by doing this. So if you haven't picked this up yet and you're going to, and you want to wander around, I encourage, to begin with, just sticking to the designated path, because you will explore every area. The game will tell you to go to each area, so don't mess up like me and kind of OP yourself. I still enjoyed it. For me, it was different though. I didn't feel weak. I felt really powerful. Like I was just standing there and invisible, and people were just walking past me. And I could literally just take out anyone, and then I could make a big daddy chase people and just sit there watching, and it felt good, you know. But it wasn't the way it was supposed to be played. So I do regret that a little bit, but it didn't, didn't make me enjoy it any less.
Well, okay, so the half of that I actually never even found the invisibility addition to the Peeping Tom Plasmid, but I think that first half, the level design stuff, was my biggest problem with this DLC. Is the way I play BioShock is I go into an area, I clear out the area of enemies, and then I go back to the beginning of that area and I look in every single nook, every single corner, and look at everything and explore the whole area. And so this was like just one big room with a bunch of other rooms attached to it, which were all huge. It was one big sort of hub that you could wander around in, and you weren't really gated from doing that. And so what I ended up doing was like just going the opposite direction of the story arrow that you can bring up, for navigating. And
yeah, that's what I did.
So I would explore an area, clear it out with some difficulty at times, and explore it all and find some stuff, and then go to the story beat, and it would say go to this room. I'm like, okay, well, I just came from there, whatever. And then I'd go back there, and all the enemies were respawned, and I'd have to do it all again. And I ended up stopping myself from doing that for the last sort of hour and a half of the DLC. But the majority of the time I just sort of like explored the whole thing and then did the story, and I had to like clear out the whole area again, which I thought was really kind of annoying. And
it was strange that
this whole DLC is sort of, it's very much designed for people that really liked BioShock, and I would think that most people that really like BioShock, I think they kind of play it like that. Like they don't necessarily go straight to the story beat, they explore the surrounding area. So it was a little weird that that was there, and that it was kind of a pain in the ass at times.
Yeah, I really agree. I think BioShock is a game that is designed to reward you for kind of going away from the the main objective and for exploring. And it's kind of weird that in this one DLC we both kind of had negative consequences for just doing what felt natural from playing the BioShock games. So I just think in hindsight, if anyone's playing this, maybe, I don't know, you can't say don't explore in the BioShock game, that's how you find the good stuff, but there's just certain areas where maybe you should follow the direction you're supposed to go, because I think the DLC does a good job of telling you, pointing you in the directions of the new areas anyway, so you shouldn't have to wander around too much. But yeah, I agree, it kind of, for me particularly as well, it kind of changed the way that my DLC played out.
Yeah, and that was kind of annoying. I mean, there still are little areas of the map that you don't have to go to for story. Like there's one about where you can learn some more about the handyman, which was completely off the path and not part of the story. Which
it was so
nice.
big as well, that area, that I almost thought
and it was a huge area.
I was wrong direction.
Yeah, when I first went in there, I was like, okay, this is I'll definitely have to come back here for story stuff, and I didn't explore it at first, and then
yeah, me too, exactly the same.
I got to the objective, and it was like, click here to go back, and I was like, whoa, no, okay, I guess I'll go and look at that area. So that was kind of weird, like they have a couple of huge areas that are not story related. So that stuff sort of stood out a lot to me.
So one thing that I was a little bit disappointed about in the first part was the story. Again, no spoilers, but the end of the first part of the DLC kind of involves a twist. It's BioShock, what's coming, but it follows the same themes of Infinite, so it's not as shocking. You already understand kind of the weird sci-fi element, so it doesn't kind of blow your brain as much as it did when it happened in Infinite. It was interesting, and I enjoyed it. But they went a different direction with the second part of this DLC. It was a different type of story. It did involve the same themes, but it wasn't depending on that, if you know what I mean. I really enjoyed the story. It was another kind of brain boggler. It had a lot of crossovers for Columbia and Rapture, which I really liked. it was much more of a fan service towards the original Bioshock, which actually kind of surprised me. I thought it was going to be like, since this is the kind of goodbye for Bioshock, I thought it was going to be like 50% Columbia, 50% Rapture, but it was really like a tribute to the original game, and it was almost like saying, Infinite wouldn't have happened without Bioshock, obviously, and it was kind of dedicating it to that, and I really liked it. I know it's hard to talk about it because we don't want to spoil it, because it's kind of the main section, but without going to any detail, it was I liked the story much more than the first part. There was a lot more background information on like characters, in-world mechanics. You learned a lot of new stuff about Columbia and Rapture, and like just basically a lot of background trivia that you haven't learned from the previous games you got to learn in this DLC. So talking very briefly about story, because even though it is one of the best parts of the game, we don't want to spoil anything. It was much improved over the first part, and yeah, I thought it added its own little twist. As you said, it kind of gave it its own identity, and I really liked it.
I liked the I definitely liked all the sort of background info on the cities and the characters. I thought that like it was really nice to learn. You learn quite a bit about a good number of things, like the Songbird and the Handyman, and but I found like the main plot line to be a little messy.
Okay.
I thought, like, don't get me wrong, like you look at Infinite and it's like, if you stare too hard at Infinite's main story, you're gonna lose your mind, because it's kind of like, if you stare, like anything with time travel or alternate dimensions, you look at it too long and it completely collapses and falls apart. But like, I didn't understand in part 2 like why Elizabeth wants to save the girl. Is this Elizabeth the main Elizabeth? Is this just one of like the Infinite Elizabeths?
It really is confusing.
And, like, all these things kind of like, they were never explained in any way, I don't think, and so like that main plot line doesn't. I didn't love that main plot line like I enjoyed Infinite or Bioshock.
I feel it was one of the most confusing ones without doing a bit of background research. I feel like I understand it now. But I remember when the credits rolled, I believe it was probably the most confused I'd been out of all the Bioshock games and DLCs.
Yeah.
But Infinite, I had to do a tiny bit of background research on Infinite, but it didn't take as much as Heresy Part 2. You need to have quite a good background knowledge on the first Bioshock. Like, you need to be really up to date on what happened in Bioshock. If you haven't played Bioshock since 2007 and you jump into this and you don't remember how the events of Bioshock came to be, you might be a little lost, because I didn't refresh myself and I was lost for a bit. And then when I recapped myself in the events of Bioshock, I was like, oh, I remember this person, what he did, and I remember this event, and now I understand how everything ties together. But yeah, I do know what you mean, but overall, I did enjoy the story a lot, even though it was... I'm not going to say it's like unexplained. It was just kind of a bit daunting to say, but that's what that's what the Bioshock games are known for, having kind of mind-bending storylines. I just didn't feel like I came away from this one with a good overall knowledge of what happened, and I had to kind of use a few resources to kind of piece everything together. But I get it now. I'm just saying that I don't know, it just didn't make as much sense to me to begin with, and I'm sure there's many people on this video who are going to say that we're idiots and it was obvious, but that's just my that's the way it worked for me.
Yeah, and it got a little, I think it ended up making it a little goofy at times, but I still really enjoyed the thing as a whole, especially like the sort of last half hour or so was really quite good, and it wraps up really nicely, and it's a fun, very fan servicey,
great fan service, yeah.
Goodbye to Bioshock, which it was really nice, when it all ended, I was like, yes, that was good. That's a good ending. Yeah,
I like the combat. I really like the story, and I was surprised about how much of a fan service it was to the original Bioshock, and how they basically said, Columbia owes everything to Rapture, and without it, Infinite wouldn't have happened. And yeah, I was surprised. I was satisfied, and overall, even though we complained a little bit about the story being daunting and the pieces we couldn't quite piece it together, but overall, it was a fantastic fan package, and much better than Burial at Sea Part 1, and probably one of my favourite parts of the Bioshock franchise to play. I really enjoyed it. Okay, so we're gonna rate it. Overall, I'm gonna give Burial Sea Part 2, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5, which I haven't given anything in a while. I'm a massive Bioshock fan. I think the story was fantastic. I thought the combat was fantastic. And the only complaint that I have is that I couldn't fully understand the story to begin with, which I can't really factually say is the game's fault and just not I wasn't listening properly or something. So
I think it's on the game.
yeah, but you know,
I think it is not as fully formed as I don't think it's as fully formed as the previous two stories.
Well, I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt that maybe I
that
I just
maybe I'm just stupid.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on some of the stuff, so it's really not enough to lower it down a star. So for me, it was some of the most fun I've had in Rapture, which, as I've said in previous videos, is my favourite in-game world. So it was fantastic. It was a good send-off to Bioshock, and I loved it. So it gets a 5-star.
Cool. I am going to go 4 stars.
Oh, okay. I think is this the first time you've gone lower than me? I think it might be.
I have no idea. I'm usually fairly generous. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. The sort of environmental moving around that and having to go back into areas many times and kill the same enemies that I've killed many times it kind of bugged me a little bit, and I wish it had been a little bit different because, you know, I've never had that problem with either of the main games. And the story stuff, it was good. It wraps up really nicely. It goes a little off the deep end at times, but like you said, like it's really well put together and a really nice send off to the whole series, and I really enjoyed it. I'm glad that it came out and that it was of this quality. You know, it was good. Even though I would rather replay BioShock or BioShock Infinite before replaying this DLC, but it was still it was a really nice send off, especially the last couple minute or two are really good. It was really nice. It was a really good experience, and it was way longer than the first one, which was good. It was like 5 hours long.
Yeah, nice length.
Which was really nice. Yeah, and it was a ton of fun. It was really fun to play. I was really impressed with that stealth stuff.
Yeah, well, I think that sums it up well. Thanks a lot for watching yet again, guys, and we will see you next time.